All right, everybody. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Sarah Guillermo, Ignite's Executive Director. Ignite is a movement of young women who are ready and eager to become the next generation of political leaders. You are in like the right place right now. And I just want to highlight my two colleagues, Amy Zucchero, who is our Chief of Resource Development, also out here on the West Coast. You are going to hear a lot from her tomorrow because she's going to be leading our training on paths to political power tomorrow. Amy, say hi.
Hi, everybody. My heart's in New England, lived there for a while. Love doing this with you all. Thanks for being with us.
And usually we share a condo apartment Airbnb situation, yes, which we did in 2018. And so we're very sad to not have a sleepover in Massachusetts last night.
And see snow.
Yes, and play in the snow because we don't get any snow. And then we also have the phenomenal Ana Del Castillo, who is our Boston fellow, and will be facilitating out both of our panels today and tomorrow, and also leading us in our morning practice of breathing and movement tomorrow as well. Ana, I can't see you, but could you say hi?
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's so good to see all 55 of you. And I see so many people are from Massachusetts. So I'm in Cambridge right now and it's very sunny. So I'm feeling the energy and just so excited to be here with you all.
Phenomenal. And I think we have, Alicia is not leading anything with us, but I would be remiss if I did not highlight her. She's our phenomenal New York fellow, and definitely got some folks in the room or in the virtual room for us today as well. So hello, Alicia in the universe. If you are confused of where you are in amplifying young women's voices to champion policy change with Ignite right now. Like I said, we're a movement of young women who are ready and eager to become the next generation of political leaders. And I'm just gonna play this very short video. Oh, I practiced this yesterday. Okay, there we go.
I was in elementary school.
Can we hear her?
Someone asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, pick up in California. So I had adults laughing at me all the time because they just thought it was so cute.
Sometimes you feel so alone thinking, hey, I'm in politics, I'm a girl, I like these issues. I was not told that I could do it at a young age. I was never encouraged to be a leader as a woman.
I started Ignite because I'd worked in women's political organizations at the national and state and local level, and I was just frankly getting frustrated with the fact that we had so few women in office. It just seemed sensible to me that what we needed to do was start younger and start getting young women to think about it.
These spaces weren't made for us. These spaces aren't going to be given to us, so we need to step up and we need to take them.
Because at the end of the day, nothing is set in stone. Your rights can be taken away. Even if you don't take an interest in politics, politics takes an interest in you.
You know, I keep hearing that the future is female, and I just want to push back and say the present is female. We not only just need to run, but we need to win. My name is Wendy Carrillo, and I recently ran for Congress.
My name is Nuri Martinez, and I'm City Councilwoman for the City of Los Angeles.
I would love to be like a congresswoman one day.
The Senate is something that I've thought about and like far away from now.
Don't wait. The moment is now. If you want to run for office, do it where you are. If you're in high school or middle school or college, run for office on your campus. Don't wait until you feel perfectly qualified. There is no moment of perfect qualification in life. You just got to seize it and go for it.
Awesome. What did we think? Any quick reactions? I'm just seeing a lot of head nodding throughout the video. Amy was telling me yesterday that's one of our older videos. So Wendy Carrillo did run for Congress and she did not win that race, but is actually serving in the California State Assembly and won that race. And then Nuri is actually the sitting Los Angeles president of the city council. And so it's been amazing to see the transition there. And I can't tell you enough about Tiffany and the work that she's accomplished since her first year as a fellow when we actually made that video. So it's a little older, but it does definitely speak to a lot of different pieces. Macy, that's a huge, that is a huge sentence for us, because politics definitely does take an interest in us, even if we're never interested. So thank you with that. I'm going to share a couple other slides before we dive into our first breakout. As you can see here, we all know these stats, but if you don't, you can walk away with this particular piece of nugget of information. And it's updated as of yesterday, December 1st. There are over 500,000 seats from the president all the way down to the Mosquito Abatement Board. And as you can see here, we have women are represented on a very overwhelmingly low percentages across the board, from Congress down to our mayors. And that is what we are changing here at Ignite. And we know that all of our work is really focused in on the city and local level, and that's been our biggest solution in thinking about what can we do. As you have noticed, change up top in the federal government, where folks are most focused up top at the president and in Congress, change is super duper slow. And so when we're thinking about the work at Ignite, we're really thinking about this over 500,000 seats, from the mayor to the Mosquito Abatement Board to getting onto these commissions. Pam just put in to say, what can be done in my area to get more women involved in politics? Is there a model to follow? Pam, here's your model. And we'll talk more about each of the different layers that we do at Ignite throughout the next 2 days. But really thinking about here in the local level is, how can we at the most local government create the policies that we need to see in our communities. You heard from Sam Perlman, who's an alum of Ignite, how she as a city councilwoman is actually dealing with COVID within the city of Marlboro. We also have young women, we have a young woman who is serving as the mayor pro tem of Eastvale, and they're also deciding whether or not businesses can open back in the COVID world. And another young woman who is a school board, I think I was going to say appointee, but she's a school board district member, and they're deciding if they're going to open the schools back up again. And so these are really, really large decisions that we are really working to get more of our young women into these particular positions to start serving. And also knowing that participating in local government not only changes policy, but is also kind of the gateway to get into more positions beyond local government. So this is our approach. Ignite's the largest young women's political organization in the country. I've been around since we started in 2010, when there was just 2 high schools. I was one, and our president and founder was the other one across the bay. And we have grown quite enormously across this country, and serving nearly 40 states right now. And we're the only organization that provides sustained political leadership training from high school all the way through graduate school, when young women are really kind of going through the entire pipeline. And I truly believe that our young women represent the diversity of this country and truly what democracy should look like. So I'm super excited for you all to be here. We are going to do a couple quick introductions. I know that we all know your names based on your Zoom name, and now we know what city you're from, but I'd love to hear now, how are you going to show up across the next 3 days at this conference? How are you going to show up? So I'll give you a second to drop those things in the chat box, and then we'll have a couple people share out. Thank you, Tracy, for getting us started. Tracy's here to listen, trying to figure out her next move. How many other people are trying to figure out their next move? Lots of head nods. I figured out how to make you all bigger. Georgia. How many people are focused on Georgia? Yes, I've been phone banking as well in Georgia. Michelle is curious how to get her daughter involved. Michelle, how old is your daughter? Oh, excellent. We have a path for her. Becky's here to make some more connections. Macy's here to actively listen. Hey, Isabel Getchell, do you want to tell us a little bit more?
Hi everyone. I'm Isabel. I'm actually still an undergraduate student and I'm studying women and gender studies and international relations, and I am interested in UMass Boston like for grad school. So this is how I found out about this conference, and I'm just here to listen to, you know, fellow women of color and people with more experience. I'm super excited for the keynote speaker tomorrow, and just to like learn about how I, as a white cisgender woman, can become a stronger ally.
Amazing, thank you. I volunteered you. Does anybody else want to share a little bit more about what they wrote in the chat box or didn't write but would like to share verbally?
I could go. My name is Bansri Kamdar. I am basically from India, but I've been studying at UMass Boston. I'm doing my graduate program in applied economics, and I've done journalism and international relations. So I write a lot on women in politics, and I want to understand more on how to improve women's political participation and also just how to cover it.
Amazing. Welcome. Thank you for sharing. Do we have one more?
Can I share, Sarah? This is Pam Davis.
Hi, Pam. Yes, I'm like trying to find you all.
Huh?
I'm trying to find you all on the screen, but now
okay.
the little green thing shows me who you are. Go ahead, Pam. Tell us how you're
I'm from Massachusetts, but I live in Randolph. It's a suburb right outside of Boston. And our community is have become very diversified. However, it's not reflected in our current leadership. And how I would like to show up today is just be able to access some resources and hopefully make some connections on how I can kind of follow through. I heard Keisha Ram mention that in the first section of our training today. And you know, I want to follow through. So I'm hoping that we can kind of create something like an Ignite so that we can get our young people involved. I think this is definitely the time for that. And I'd like to just start to establish some resources in our town to help people who want to be part of change.
That's amazing. And we're going to learn a lot from our panel today, that there's multiple ways to be engaged and multiple ways to create change. So we're super excited about that. I see that Lauren would like to share. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, my name is Lauren Leonardis. I'm in Amherst, Mass. And I wanted to share that I am here primarily to make connections and network, and also obviously to learn from this event. But I think especially for women who have had the underhand in the social capital in our world for years and years and years, it is so important that we be connected and we connect with each other, and that when one of us gets in, we get the other ones in. I wouldn't have had any of the success that I've had today if there were not women. And I can think like every single woman in my life right now has helped me edit my papers, has given me a reference, has taught me how to do something new. And I wouldn't have that if I didn't have connections. So that's super important to me.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think one of the other activities I like to do that we won't have time for this morning is the question of whose shoulders do we stand on each day? And there are so many women, countless. I don't have enough fingers and toes to name all of them that have been able to get me to where I am today. And so I think always thinking about how do we expand our network and how do we continue to really emphasize that because there's more to learn every single day. I think you can see my little tree of books behind me, but books are one way to do it, and these types of communities are another really large way to do it as well. I also want to highlight what Kyra wrote in the chat box and thinking about this post-COVID world, because we will get there. Everybody, we will get to the post-COVID world and what it means to be a healing post-crisis leader. I think that that is a really big piece for us to think about in movement building. At Ignite, as I shared at the very beginning, we are a movement, and we know that it takes every piece of us to sustain the movement, but we also know that sometimes we have to tap out of the movement to be our best within it. And so that will show up in a couple different places throughout our time together today, through the panel and through the activities, and then also within our time tomorrow. And I know that Representative Ayanna Pressley is going to definitely hit on that as a really big piece in the conversation that she'll be leading with us tomorrow. So if you have other things you want to drop in the chat box, please do so. We will keep that pretty active during our time here, but we will have lots of opportunity for folks to get off of mute to talk in the whole group and also in the smaller groups. Okay, so before I turn us into this, actually, I think I'm going to stop my screen share. Before I get us into some more breakout groups, or our first breakout group to have this conversation about what matters most to us in our communities, I'd love for folks to start dropping in the chat box, what matters most to you? And we asked this question, thank you, Lauren, for kicking us off. We asked this question because this is the New England Policy Conference, and our particular track is really thinking about, at the end of our time together, what are the priorities for young women, and particularly young women of color within the New England community, for us to really uplift as a larger entity and coalition. And so thinking about that. And so please drop in all of these different layers that are really the things that make you wake up every morning, or wake you up in the middle of the night. That's me. Or you just can't go to sleep for. So please drop all of those different pieces in. And there's lots of variation too, in terms of what folks have been dropping in, from racial equity to cyclical poverty to health, both mental health and physical health. Okay, and then forgive me for this poll. Zoom only allows you to do up to 10 options. So I am gonna run a poll, and it's gonna have a couple of the different options related to what you've been sharing here. And there's going to be the first question, but don't worry, there's going to be more options after that. And you can pick multiple options, I think. Yeah, I think it's multiple choice. So you can opt to do multiple ones. So I'll give you about 45 seconds to a minute to pick all the ones that matter most to you. And if they're missing from this list, please make sure to drop them into the chat box so that we don't miss them. Thank you, Sophia. We've got about 80% of folks who voted, so I'll give you another 20 minutes just to complete the poll, and then we'll show off our results. Okay. We have about 90% of you. Oh, thank you, Sophia. You have to scroll all the way down. It is it's a little long of a poll because it has 2 questions. Maria, are you all good? Did anyone else have that issue? Okay. I am gonna end the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now I'm gonna share the results with everybody. And I'll just scroll for it. Can everyone see the results? Okay, good. Do you have to scroll or am I scrolling? You can scroll down. Okay. So as you can see, there's a pretty large variation, but gender equality and racial inequality are the top two issues that matter most for folks in this particular breakout. And then we have a few more too that have been popped into the chat box in terms of things that have been missing from this list. And then you can see there's quite a bit still around abortion, around climate change, LGBTQ rights, education, which I'm assuming is also going to be very much related to student debt as well. Yes, now that I'm there. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to go into some smaller breakout rooms with just groups of 4. And you're all going to go into these breakouts and you can pick 1, 2, as many policy issues or social issues that you care most about as a group. And I'd love for you to devise what you think are the top ways that we can address these policies. Is it a new policy? Is there a policy that you're currently working on that we should really be uplifting? Or is it a different way of thinking about it? Is it bringing more awareness to this particular issue? How should we tackle this within the New England community? So I'm going to pop you all into this, into these small breakouts. I think you have about 5 to 7 minutes to actually chat. Maybe we'll try to give you some more time to spend in there, and then we'll come back in here. Oh, I think I have to sleep. Oh, excuse me. Good morning. There's the Gesundheit. Okay. So I'm going to open the rooms and I will broadcast the questions and directions again, but feel free to reintroduce yourselves to your mini breakout group mates and learn a little bit more each other, because I know that the top thing that everybody wants to get out of our time together today is connection. So please make sure to do those introductions. Okay, we'll see you back in a few minutes.
Sarah, should I join a breakout?
You're welcome to, but you don't have to.
Okay. Oh, Noelle, you were muted. We didn't hear you.
I have the same question. Should I also join a breakout room?
Oh, you're welcome to. Hi, Noelle. Thanks for joining us. I haven't met you yet. I'm Sarah.
Nice to meet you.
I'm gonna resume recording. I'd love to hear what folks discussed in their breakouts. Let's make sure that we capture everything in the chat box. So if at least one person from your group could type in some of your recommendations in the chat box, and then we'd love to have a couple of people share out before we transition into our phenomenal panel this morning. Madison would love to share. Please start us off, Madison.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madison. It's so nice to meet everyone. I was in a breakout room with Jeanette Rivera, and we were talking a little bit about the intersection between healthcare policy and also community healing right now, especially in the next couple months when we look towards vaccine distribution for the COVID-19 pandemic. We were talking about the sort of grassroots community healing work that especially needs to take place in communities of color that are uniquely and disproportionately affected by both medical racism and also infrastructural problems that lead to increased vulnerability to COVID-19. So sort of talking about the community healing that needs to take place before, during, and after the distribution of any vaccine that we see within the next 6 months to a year. And then also sort of transitioning, we talked a little bit about how yesterday was actually World AIDS Day and how it's important to acknowledge that COVID-19 is not the first pandemic that we've seen since the 1918 flu, and that the LGBT community and communities of color and a lot of other communities are still reeling, frankly, from the scars that HIV/AIDS left and has continued to leave. So we talked about the importance of LGBT and gender affirming sexual education and how that can help those communities to work forward from that sort of thing. So that's what Jeanette and I talked about.
Amazing. Thank you, Madison and Jeanette. I think we have time for one more group to share it.
I can go ahead and hop in if that's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sumia and I had a really interesting conversation. Her mic wasn't working, so we were kind of going through chat, but we were talking a little bit about Indigenous representation in politics and how to create space and for Indigenous people who have been so harmed by the system, and how, just how to go about creating networks of support, kind of like Kesh Aram was talking about with like the people of color in Vermont who face so much violence and threats upon being elected to office. So we were having a conversation about that. And then we also talked a little bit about public health as well. But it was really interesting and nice to get to connect with some other people. So thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Emma. This is such, and just reading what is happening in the chat box, it sounds like everyone had some really, really fruitful conversations, even though it was a tiny segment of time. So I'm super appreciative of that. Please feel free to keep adding them if you haven't yet, or other ideas that pop up for you in terms of policy recommendations, or like I said, in terms of adding or education, what the pieces are that we need to do to have young women's voices at the table, to really shift the ways in which we dismantle the systemic ways that really prevent folks from doing what they need to do in this world. I am super excited for the next half of our time. I am going to hand it over to our phenomenal fellow Ana Del Castillo to lead us into our panel discussion this morning.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be moderating this next panel. We have some incredible women with us here today. Isabel Garcia, who is the founder of Estoy Aquí, Andrea Gonzalez, who is a program facilitator for Young Voices Rhode Island, and Noelle Rippey Williams, who is a student activist based at the University of Vermont at Montpelier. So first of all, I just want to say, like, looking at those photos, looking at you all being young women is just so inspiring, the work that you're doing as young people. And I know that we'll all really benefit from hearing what you have to share today. So my first question, just to kick us off, is if you can tell us a bit about what you're currently doing and what brought you to that work. And I'm going to ask Isabel if you want to start us off.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm super excited to be here. Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna control myself. Breathe. So my name is Isabel Garcia. I use she, her pronouns. I am now getting my master's in public health at Baypad University. I'm almost done. Oh my gosh. February 26th, counting the days. I work at Mount Holyoke College, which is in South Hadley, Massachusetts. I do community and inclusion work, which includes, social justice-based events and intergroup dialogue training for students, staff, etc. But my real work is really in suicide prevention. So I have my own organization called Estoy Aquí, and my whole goal is to bring racial justice-based curriculum that fits the needs of Black and Brown people when it comes to mental health and social justice. And I do so in many ways, so through delivering training and through delivering healing circles. I also volunteer for a bunch of suicide prevention organizations by doing translation work. So I do a lot of translation work for mental health content nationally. And I also advocate for the training of suicide prevention for what I call the original counselors. Those are barbers, hairstylists, bartenders, and librarians. So I am currently working on a project to build training for the original and cultural counselors. And in terms of activism, like explicit activism, I'm also part of 413 Stay Woke, Stay Active, which is a movement with more than 8,000 followers in the 413 area of Massachusetts. And yeah, I could keep going for hours about this. But so what brought me into this work? Well, unfortunately, I have experienced suicidal thinking or intensity since I was a child, started maybe around 8 years old. And unfortunately, my parents didn't have the education that is needed to look for signs and things like that. So I didn't get the proper attention that I needed. And so I have unfortunately experienced involuntary hospitalizations and a lot of maltreatment from therapists and psychiatrists in the mental health system in this country. And so I'm gonna be honest with y'all, what has really brought me into this work is anger. And I wanna make sure that anger is not demonized. Anger can be used for many productive things. And because of the anger of injustice that I have experienced in this country as an immigrant, that anger is what has kept me going in this work. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
I was muted, but there were a lot of like and snapping. So thank you so much, Isabel, for your vulnerability and for bringing that to this space. We really appreciate it and honor it. Okay, next, I'd love to hear from Noelle. If you could tell us a little bit about what you're up to and what brought you to the projects that you're working on.
Yeah, so I'm Noelle Ryby-Williams. I go to UVM and I'm studying health science. And so now I advise the Racial Justice Alliance group at my prior high school. And so that's awesome. I get to be in my shoes 3 years ago. And I also advise an affinity, a BIPOC affinity group at the middle school in the same district. So that has been really great. And those two groups really just focus on, the BIPOC affinity group focus on healing and just connections and self-love, because it's really hard sometimes to love yourself. And then the Racial Alliance group focus on community outreach, and also right now we're trying to get the SRO out of our high school and our district. We don't want the SRO a part of our school district. And I also help design Black women empowerment t-shirts, and so I raise money to hand them out and give t-shirts to my community. Yeah.
Amazing. If you have a link for those t-shirts, please share it in the chat because I definitely want to get one. Finally, let's kick it off to Andrea.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Gonzalez. I am part of Young Voices, an organization in Rhode Island, a nonprofit that focuses on transforming urban youth into powerful advocates. We also focus on policy and making sure that our youth are prepared to be the ones who make that policy change. I've also involved with Planned Parenthood. I've been a STARS member there, which is students teaching about responsible sexuality. My main focus is usually on education and racial equity. When I say racial equity, I usually include everything that comes with it. So that would be not only for BIPOC, but also for immigrants, for any kind of minority communities, as well as LGBTQ+ advocacy. Being an immigrant myself and a Latina woman who comes from a Black family and also a white family who's like that weird middle part, I have experienced both sides of seeing my family deal with the issues of racial inequality, and also having the privilege to sometimes be recognized as a white woman and pass. And I've seen the different sides of it, and it was so hard to see like people struggle when, it was like, that's my cousin right there. Why are you, not treating us the same? We're the same exact person, but okay. Not only that, but being such a young person and struggling so much in my life as coming as an immigrant for refugee and not knowing English when I first came into the country and being so confused about everything. I didn't know that school shootings were a thing, but I guess they are. I didn't know that police brutality was a thing, but clearly it is. I was so uneducated about myself, about others, about everything that had to do with my own life, like my family, my friends, my identity as a bisexual young woman. Everything was so confusing, and I made so many mistakes along the way that I felt that it was so unfair that I was making those mistakes, that I was not treated equally, that people around me were not treated equally. And kind of like Isabel, I was angry. I was very angry, and I was frustrated because I thought that I deserved to know better. So I started getting involved with Young Voices when I was 13 years old. So that was 4 years ago. I'm currently 17. And I fell in love with it. I found my voice. I found my power. I found that I could make a difference as a young woman. And that gave me everything. And because I wasn't educated on myself, on sexuality, on LGBTQ plus rights and reproductive rights, I was like, I'm going to work at Planned Parenthood and I'm going to learn along the way. And that's what I did. And then I was teaching in high schools the same things that I didn't know about myself. And then last year, well, this year actually, because that's when I graduated. I just graduated high school and I'm currently trying to get into, I'm studying for a master's degree in social work, hopefully, crossing fingers. And I've just been involved with Young Voices for my entire life, basically. What I consider my entire life, which is 13 to now. And that's really what brought me into this work. I guess that anger as well, but also that need for education, not only for myself, but for those around me who face those same injustices that I did.
Thank you so much. Before we move to the next question, I just wanted to recommend to everyone, if you select speaker view, I think that's the best way to make sure that you're getting the full effect of our panelists. So I just recommend doing speaker view so you can see them when they speak. And yeah, just going off of that first question, you know, today's day is focused on amplifying young voices to champion policy change. And you all are so beautifully doing that through your various organizing work. And so I'm wondering if you can define what community organizing is and how community organizing can actually lead to tangible policy change. And you can go in whatever order you'd like.
I'll go. So to me, community organizing takes everybody. It takes a village. And even when you think these policies don't affect you directly, they do indirectly. And my definition is like collective liberation. Like we all have to be there to liberate each other and help each other. And so like, whilst you help one person, you're helping yourself. And yeah, that's how it's moving to me.
All right, I'm gonna call on someone then. Andrea, do you wanna go next?
Thank you. I was like, who's gonna go? I don't want to interrupt. I think for me, community organizing is very similar to what Noelle said. I feel that it's just everyone coming together. Like it can't just be, if women were just fighting for women's rights, it's like we need everyone. We need all of you to care for these issues. I can't just have BIPOC people fighting for racial equality. Like we need everyone to be in it. I can't have just immigrants fighting for immigrants' rights, because at the end of the day, as much as I would like to think that we have most of the power, we don't. And it is usually those people that look nothing like us and who don't have those same struggles that are the ones who hold that power. But hopefully with education and a little bit of compassion, they learn about us and they decide to come onto this side and fight with us. I think that it takes everyone to be able to make these changes. We can't do it alone, but we can definitely keep fighting.
Wow, that is such a, I love that tagline, Andrea. Like that was so perfect. Oh my God. Anyhow, so how do I define community organizing? I define it as imagination in its active form. It is all about imagination for me. So for instance, the mental health and psychiatric system for me have been a source of oppression and harm. And so what are my alternatives? You know, that's where imagination comes in, because I'm thinking outside of what is already here, the default, the norm, which is again why I train barbers and hairstylists and librarians, because those are the alternatives that I see when it comes to the mental health system. And I am, like I said, a public health student. And one of the things that I have studied is how organizing has been part of literally so many policy changes, historical policy changes in this country. So historically, we know there is proof that, honestly, I don't think you can have policy change without organizers. I really don't. And we need to have in mind that, by the way, organizing shows up in many ways. So how can how can you make it a path to policy change? Literally attending a town hall in your city, and right now, webinars, for instance, attend a webinar even, it doesn't have to be, sometimes we get stuck on how big our action has to be, which, by the way, is white supremacy, telling you that quantity is better than quality. So we have to watch out for that. So literally putting energy and time in attending webinars and educating yourself, that is also organizing. I believe so. So for example, just to finish off, I was part of the Springfield Public Health Council for 2 years. I was the youngest person there. I wasn't even in the master's program yet, but I was there and I was part of a historical decision. We finally got the first syringe access program in Springfield, Massachusetts, after 20 years of advocating for that. And I was there, the youngest person there. I was like, oh, okay. So literally, how can you get to that path? One of the things that you can do is simply ask. I literally asked a friend of mine, can I be part of this council? Oh, okay, bring me your resume. I did, and I became part of the council. So if you're doubting yourself, well, there are people out there who believe more in you than you believe in yourself. So trust that, trust the process.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I agree with so much of that. And I think what you said about attending this webinar, attending a webinar, attending teach-ins, those are you are here for a reason. You obviously care about, justice and racial equity. So I just echo that so hard, that attending a webinar and learning is a part of movement work. And I think that leads us into our next question, which is, we know that there are so many different roles in movement work. And I'm wondering how you found your specific role and what advice you might give to the attendees who are thinking about how they can match their passion to action. So just tell us, how did you choose your role and what advice do you have for all of us who want to find our role? And feel free to jump in when you feel inspired.
So my activism work started when I was in my junior year of high school. And Major Jackson, a Black poet, came to read poetry to us. And that was the first time I'd ever had a Black man come to my school and do anything. And so my cousin and I were super, super excited to have that opportunity. And so we went, and kids behind us were being really destructive and saying the N-word and being really rude. And my cousin turned around and she was like, can you please stop saying that word? And they were like, it's freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want. So my cousin left the auditorium. That one moment was taken away from her. She left the auditorium and she went to the social worker, and they talked about creating the Racial Justice Alliance group that I advise now. And so our creation of that group came out of that horrible moment, but turned into a really empowering thing. And so through that group, we were the first school to raise the Black Lives Matter flag, and we did a lot of community outreach. And so I think my role today is just to empower young people and have the people in my group voices heard, and to, again, take the SRO. That's our big thing right now, is to have the SRO removed from our schools. And I think representation is huge. When Black women see other Black women in these roles of power, and just any role, it inspires you to do whatever you'd like to do. So I feel blessed to have that impact on these young women.
I could quickly go. I think that for me, I found that my role in activism was mostly to be a healer and an educator. I noticed that by me actually being there for the people that needed me to be there, I was making a difference. I've noticed this a lot in my work in Young Voices, where a lot of people there are minority communities, and a lot of them are immigrants as well. And seeing that a couple of immigrant kids just felt so comfortable with me being there, just the fact that I was there, that I knew the struggle, that I wasn't going to look at them and be like, oh, you're undocumented, well, that's wrong. Like, they just knew. They knew that I was a safe space. And by me just providing that, they just felt so much better. And I noticed that the struggles that they had been through, that they wrote about in their college essays, no one so far had been able to actually just sit down with them and help them heal. Like, no one had been able to just sit down with them and treat them like just a common person. And that's something that I felt like myself, I never got. I never got to just be an average person. I was always like, well, I guess I'm the only woman in this room. Well, I guess I'm the only Latina in this room. I guess everyone's making fun of my accent. And when it wasn't that, I was like, I guess I'm the only LGBTQ plus person. Should I speak up? Should I stay quiet? Like, am I in danger if I say I am LGBTQ plus? And this is now. Like, this is current times in which, like, you know, everything is so much better and racism is almost done, and so is everything else, which is not true, by the way. But even in times like this, that you still have to feel that anxiety of, am I really normal? Do I feel normal? Because if I'm not a white straight man, I don't really feel that normal. And just giving that, providing that sense of, yeah, you're average, I guess, but not in a bad way. But you're an average person that can make so much work. Like, you're not different in a negative way. Just being able to provide that to someone else was one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life, because I needed that when I was younger. I hate saying that because I'm 17, but when I was younger, I needed that. And I still do sometimes. And being here right now with so many powerful women, I don't feel like an outcast. I feel like we're just all a community together. So I think my purpose has always been to be a healer, to educate and to make everyone feel welcome, or try my best to do so.
So in my case, I have been organizing for 11 years now. Now, when did I find that out? This summer. I was like, wait, I have been organizing for 11 years? So how did I find that out? Because I finally got the vocabulary that I needed to define my organizing work. Because I used to think that organizing was just protests, right? I had like this very basic definition of, well, if you say you're an organizer, that means that you coordinate protests and participate on them. But then again, I realized, oh, no. This is way more than that. And so what gave me the vocabulary was a document called Social Change Ecosystem by Deepa Liar. I highly recommend that document. She speaks about the different roles in organizing, and I was able to pinpoint that my role is of a healer and caregiver. And so I thought, well, okay, so that is my role. And so how do I put this into action? So that is when I started to think, okay, so I'm gonna build community care circle series. I'm gonna build healing circles where I combine the intergroup dialogue approach I use in my work in Holyoke and also indigenous circle practice. So that is just one way that I really put into practice my healing and I would say caretaking role. Also, I guess I would advise people on how to match your passion for action. I will advise to ask yourself, what makes life worth living? And this is a question that I ask a lot because of suicide prevention. So, but again, social justice is suicide prevention, by the way. Let me just put that out there. So ask yourself, what makes life worth living? And then think about the barriers to get to those things. Now, don't only get stuck on what are the barriers to go to those things, because then there's action. Then let's find opportunities out there that can give us the power to work on reducing those barriers. And that is when, for instance, volunteering comes in. Volunteering saved my life. Volunteering for me was a suicide prevention intervention, because that's how I learned about my healing, about my caregiving skills, that I knew, wow, I'm good at this and I love it. And so that's how I literally found my purpose in organizing, through volunteering. And it's also helpful because it builds your expertise on certain populations and areas. So that's how I find out that the population that I want to work with are specifically college students, teenagers, and parents. So I believe that asking yourself what makes life worth living, looking at the barriers, looking for ways to reduce those barriers, and one of the many ways is through volunteering.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much love in the chat box. And I love that question of what makes life worth living. I think that that's something we always have to ask ourselves. So I have one final wrap up question before we move into our breakout rooms for Q&A with our attendees. And so this question is really coming out of this year of 2020, which has really taught us all about resiliency. It's taught us about grief. It's taught us about loss. And the importance of self-care and rest. So for you three amazing panelists who are doing this life-changing work in the world, how do you keep yourself sustained in this work? And what advice might you have to others to keep themselves sustained in this really important work?
To me, my family keeps me going. My brothers I have two younger brothers, and they're like my everything. And so I do a lot of the work I do for them, and the future, my hopes and demands that my kids and my kids' kids will have a future that they can be their authentic self and feel safe. So
I could quickly go. I think for me, what keeps me going is, and this is going to sound a little bit weird, but my past is the thing that keeps me going. Just remembering those days that I didn't have someone like me, or that I did have someone like me, that I did have someone who was a social worker, or someone who was willing to educate me even when I was so ignorant. I felt so good in those moments, and it reminds me every day of why I'm doing it. And I mean, obviously sometimes it gets exhausting to, and I'm sure everyone feels this, of why am I fighting so hard for something when, you know, the people in power are the ones who don't care for me? Like, why am I fighting so hard when these people don't care if I am dead or alive? It's just a number to them, and even the numbers, no matter how high they are, they don't care. But just remembering those days, remembering the days that things did go well, and remember the days that it didn't go so well, but knowing that I can be that difference, or that the person next to me could be that difference, that makes me so happy. And it just makes me want to keep going. And if anything, it's kind of like a big, like, well, screw you for, like, screw everything that told me that I couldn't, and screw everyone that tried to put me in a position of not having any power. Because I think the biggest brag you can have is to be a strong woman who's willing to do anything to get what she needs. And I think that's like the hugest, like, screw you to capitalism, to like people who are racist, to be like, well, too bad that you have those opinions, because here I am and I'm rocking it. And I think that also keeps me going, that little like sassiness of me, but also my past for sure. Like, I do have a good, I do have a good reason, but also that sassiness, that little like, I want to prove you wrong. I just gotta prove you wrong, because I am great and I don't give a crap what you say. So just a little bit of that too.
I love that. Wow. So there are many things that keep me going. but one of them is I want to be the person who I didn't have growing up. So when I think about giving up, which I think about that a lot, I'm like, oh, should I really be doing this? And that's imposter syndrome too. I think, no. I need to be the person who I didn't have growing up, which entails people. What I needed was a person who was observant and curious, who said, "Oh my God, I have noticed these things. You know, I haven't noticed that you've been crying, that you have been having panic attacks. What is going on?" That's what I needed, and I didn't have that. So, and those things could save someone's life. So having that in mind is very important to me. Also, something that keeps me going is understanding that there is not really an endpoint. Let's be real here. This work is forever. And to me, I'm just planting seeds by literally just by talking about racial justice as a suicide prevention issue. That's literally me planting a seed. Am I really gonna see the changes I wanna see in my lifetime? Probably not. Let's be real. But I'm putting the seeds, and that imagination keeps me excited almost. It's like I know that I'm building momentum, in that maybe I will not see that momentum explode, right? Like actually seeing change, but I know that the children, the youth after me will probably take advantage of that momentum that I am building with other people. And let's see what else. When I talk about self-care, I talk about community care. So one of the things that I have been thinking about is how to shift my language. So community care is about reaching out to people. So you don't wait for someone to be on distress to reach out. You just reach out because it is part of being a human. And so when I reach out to people, instead of asking, now I'm starting to shift from starting to ask, have you eaten? Have you been sleeping? Instead of, did you finish that paper? Did you? No. I'm now going from productivity, the idea of productivity, to the idea of rest as a form of resistance.
Yes. Self-care is community care. I can't thank you all enough for all the wisdom that you shared with us. I think that you three are seed planters, and I am hopeful that spring is on the horizon and that an abundance and a harvest is about to bloom. And I just feel so inspired by this conversation. So thank you all. Let's show our panelists some love, either in the chat box or with your little clapping reaction hands. Y'all are truly amazing. And so now what we're gonna do is I believe we're gonna take a group photo, and then you'll have the opportunity to talk with one of the panelists in your breakout group and to ask them your questions, to just engage in conversation. So I'll hand it back to Sarah.
Thank you, Anna. Oh, I'm so excited. I had lots of phenomenal sound bites that I wrote down here. And I'm also excited we're recording so I could enjoy this at another time. I love that we didn't even have to ask people to get on video. So I'm going to take a couple screenshots of our faces, and we have a couple layers of our thing. So we'll do one where we'll just smile into it, or however you want to show up in this photo, and then we'll do a little fun, wackier one. So, all right, okay, I'm gonna do this correctly. All right, 1, 2, 3. Wait, did I do it right? Anna, is it Command Shift 4 or Command Alt 4?
I think it's Command Shift 4. I would volunteer to do it, but my key is broken.
Uh-oh. I don't hear it.
Try Command Shift 3 just in case.
Oh, it happened. Okay, let's do it again where I'm not looking like a weirdo. Okay, thank you for the feedback, everybody. Okay, Command Shift 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then the second one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then whatever power pose you want to inject into our space today. Mine's gonna be a taking the photo one, but we'll do it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I love these. I love the snaps. And then one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, y'all. So you're gonna get a little breakout notification. So Andrea's and Noelle's group are gonna head on over, and then Isabel's gonna stay in here with me. And then we'll have about 15 minutes in these breakouts to do Q&A, and then we'll come back together before we close out today. See y'all soon. And if you're unassigned, it means that you're hanging out with us in here. Oh, good, my math was accurate. Excellent. Okay. All right, folks. So we get the pleasure of Isabel for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Does anyone have any questions for her? You can either come off mute or drop it in the chat box. Monica, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, not a question, but I just a really big thank you for being available and willing and interested in taking part today. I'm so happy to be here listening to everything you have to say.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I feel like, oh my gosh. I feel validated. I just really feel very validated. Like, oh yeah, maybe I have the right thoughts out there, yeah.
Isabel.
Again, imposter syndrome. Remember that.
Yeah.
I have to fight that. Yeah.
Isabel, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I'm a former social worker. I've worked with a lot of people, young people with mental health issues. And I know to share your story about what you have been through is very powerful, and it also helps with healing. And I love the ease in which you're able to do that, because I think that helps to get rid of the stigma behind that. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people here, and I have 2 young daughters who at some point struggled with that. And just to hear your positivity and how you're taking what you've been through and you're pushing it into action. I just want to commend you for that, because we need so much more of that in our society, so we can get rid of the stigma of mental health, and so we can begin to help those who really need help, not put them in prisons, but give them treatment. That's part of the issue we're having now with the people that are incarcerated. They don't know where to go for help. They don't know who to ask for help. They don't know what services are out there. Yeah. So you being at the grassroots and doing that I just want to applaud you. And you just keep on going, sister, because I can see a bright future in you. And I'm just really excited to hear what you are doing and sharing your story. So I just want to, I appreciate that.
Wow. Wow. I really appreciate that. I really do. I really appreciate your comment. And as you were talking, things, came up to my mind, right? One, thank you for mentioning prisons. When you look at data about mental health care access and things like that, and the data is always, well, Black people don't go to therapy. Yeah, maybe Black men don't go to therapy because they're put in jail. And that data doesn't get recorded. So maybe that's the problem of access to care. No, it's not that we don't want to be supported and talk about problems. It's what is the system doing to us? So, part of my work is going from that individualistic thing to the collective and holding systems accountable for these things. So from the idea of, well, we don't access care. Well, why are you putting us in jail then? How are we going to access that care that is supposedly available? The other thing is, this is a lot about suicide prevention, is literally telling people to reach out. But then when you reach out, you're put into a wait list of like 4 months to see a therapist. And by the time you want to see a therapist, you already want to die, because what is the point? So why tell people to reach out when the system is not ready for you? Especially if you're a person of color. Why tell people to go into a system that doesn't want to see you thrive? That's why I look at alternatives. So who do we have in our community that is already doing this work for free? Barbers, hairstylists, librarians, and bartenders are doing the mental health work for free. So let's look at that. That's what I'm saying. I get really passionate about this.
And I think too, a lot of times they don't just, it's not even about reaching out, it's that it's not offered. When a young man or a young woman is in court for a drug violation, typically it literally is not offered to them. Even when they ask for it, it is not offered to them. And then we have to look at more of what is happening with, finances, or, they're just not putting money into mental health. They're just not doing it. So that is a policy change that that is really important if people are going to thrive. And if we can look at what's happening now, imagine being a person of color and looking at, the Black Lives Matter movement. And then let's switch it up and look at what's happening now with our nation being so divided. And then the fear, and I'm a woman of color, and I have 2 women of color who are young Black girls, and I have 2 young Black sons. And so, when you think of that, what is the mental health just racially, the mental health that comes with being Black or a person of color in this country, and then looking at this divide and seeing what's happening, slowly chipping away at civil rights. So what is the fear that young people are having now? What is their future looking like? Whether it be the racial divide, what's happening to their environment? Is there going to be a planet here that's sustainable? It's just so much. And those are the things that need to be addressed.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Maria. Thank you so much for your
we need
comment.
to connect, Maria.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna have you all take that offline because we have a short period of time and we have a couple of questions that are coming in. So Ruth, I'm gonna go to you next, and then we'll get to Burley's question in the chat box.
I wanted to add, and you mentioned this, the value of self-care. If you look at a lot of movements, women often play a vital role in the management, the leadership, even if it's not as visible as men. And there's a huge challenge with self-care in that process. We often are so busy giving to others, healing others, supporting others, that we don't pour into ourselves, and we experience burnout. And when, like you mentioned this earlier, and I just felt it's really important that we echo this, that when you do this type of work, you have to manage not just your mental health. As a part of that is that self-care. To me, that's part of the challenge that just exists in the systems that we're talking about, where there are no services and resources. Some of the people that are working in those same systems have challenges with self-care and are administering so much work that, there's systemic issues within that, right? And so I thought it was really important that you mentioned that, because I think that gets lost in the conversation, where people if they want to volunteer, because I've done what you've done, where a way that I've addressed my challenges is by giving back to my community. And if you don't have a healthy balance of that, you could easily experience burnout, and it's no good for anyone else if you're not good to yourself. And I think, to me, that's a huge issue with our capitalistic society, that we are so invested in things, we are so invested in power structures, that we lose sight of the humanistic experience that exists in our world. And when we lose sight of that, it's part of the systemic issues that we are also fighting. So I think it's important to identify self and the needs and what you need to give yourself to continue doing the work that you're passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, Ruth, thank you so much. I think that transitions us too into the question that Burley has asked, because I think that's a really big like piece at the forefront is how do you maintain that when all of us have our varied lived experiences and the reasons that we're answering the call to service. And so, Isabel, if you want to tackle the next question, what are 2 to 3 ways that you're decompressing and actually pausing from the movement and taking a break from the day-to-day?
Yeah, that is such a good question. I'm gonna say this, and maybe it might not even be relevant, but I just feel like I have to say it. Of course we have to take care of ourselves. Of course we have to hold ourselves accountable for our wellness, and at the same time we have to hold systems accountable for harming our wellness. Because for me, taking a bath or sleeping, sure, I need to do that, and also I need to work on policy change in my work where they expect you to work for more than 40 hours a week. So yeah, let's take care of ourselves and also look at what is causing us to need so much self-care in the first place. I just want to put that out there. But to directly answer the question, 2, 3 ways to decompress and give yourself a break. It's simple for me. I love watching movies. I love comedies, and I love corny comedies. Like and you know why I like it? Because the ending is predictable. And when you do suicide prevention, sometimes you look at predictability as a way to protect yourself because of all the trauma I have had in my past where I lack control. Watching those romantic movies where I know that there's gonna be a happy ending gives me a sense of control. So that's literally, it sounds very corny, but it's one of those things that help me.
Yeah, that's I have a very fun watch list right now that has nothing to do with only predictable happy endings. If you all need some recommendations for your Netflix watch list, please hit us up for that. Tracy put in here, we need to pay women more so that they can actually afford to take time off. I think that's a big policy component in terms of really thinking about pay equity, because when you go in with a low salary, you're kind of tied to that for the rest of your life. And so how do we actually systematically empower women to ask for a larger salary, but also how can we systematically ensure that businesses can actually offer that and create that particular layer? Because it is, yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it's hard to take time off. I keep telling my team to take time off and they're like, but I have all this work to do. And I'm like, well, the work's gonna come back. And it's never gonna be a shift on that. I think, so folks, we're gonna come back in 1 more minute. Isabel, any other advice or thoughts for this particular breakout group, given our conversation thus far?
Good question. I guess reminding ourselves that mental health is a political issue, that suicide prevention is social justice. So anything you do, climate change, abortion rights, anything social justice, you are preventing suicide. So, having that in mind, I think is really important in this work. All these things are connected in some shape or form.
Yes, everything is totally interconnected. I have a firm belief that I'm a global citizen, so whatever I do in this little bubble that I have directly impacts and indirectly impacts everybody around this globe. And so what energy can I pour in to make things a little bit better each day is definitely a very large piece that I think about, and also think about in the sense of leading Ignite in our communities in the ways that we're going to impact change. I know that I said that our work is at the most local level, but we also know that local impact has global change as well. You can have that soundbite to end our breakout session. Thank you, Alicia. We are going to bring folks back in to our time together, and we'll be wrapping up our Young Women's track for today. So we'll just give folks another minute to come on back in. If there are any other policy recommendations or awareness areas that you have heard from our speakers that you think we need to be uplifting as we continue to devise this coalition agenda in New England, please add them into the chat box so we can document everything for Friday. At the end of the conference, we'll be coming back together to have this larger conversation about our policy agenda. So please, please, please grab that in there. I think everybody, I see Anna and Amy, so your groups are back. Welcome, welcome back. Thank you all so much for joining us for the first Young Women's track today. Today, we spent some time really amplifying young women's voices for policy change. I am so, so inspired by all of our panelists, but also for every single person that chose to participate here today. I told you at the beginning, we're a little different and that you would have deep interactions with each other. So I hope that you are able to connect not with just one person, but with multiple folks throughout your time together today. We are going to, I just want to highlight actually a couple more pieces before we go back into the main session that I really heard in our time together today. One is you can't do policy change without organizing. They go hand in hand with one another. You can't organize without really thinking about how you want to shift things within your community. The other thing I really want to highlight is that everyone can play their part in the movement. And the roles that you play within the movement can shift over time. You might be a protester at an early age and a healer at a later age, or vice versa, or whatever role feels most applicable to you in that time. So really want to highlight that piece from our panel discussion. And then the question that Isabel posed for us is really, what makes life worth living? What wakes us up? What wakes us up in the middle of the night every morning? What keeps us up? But what is that big piece for you that's really driving your call to service? And whether that means you're going to be an organizer, a policy maker, the next city councilwoman, the next state assembly, the next president of the United States, which of those different layers? Because there's going to be imposter syndrome no matter what, right? And so I think keeping all of those different pieces. And if you get veered off the course at any moment, there are 45, 50 plus women that you've connected with today that will help you get back into that course when you're ready. And then the last thing I just want to highlight is really what we were talking about in our breakout that started as part of the panel conversation that Anna highlighted for us, but self-care is community care. And really thinking about how do we truly hold our systems accountable so that we don't have to be investing in self-care all the time, but that systematic change, that taking care of ourselves is just the norm in our lives. So thank you so much for the time this morning. I feel like it went by super quick. Please drop in your Instagram handles or however you want us to follow each other. But we are gonna drop in the link for going back to the main session. And then just a quick preview for tomorrow. We get to be adorned with our time with Representative Ayanna Pressley. I'm so excited. So please make sure that you're on bright and early for that tomorrow. And then our breakout tomorrow is on the paths to political leadership and political power and owning that. And we have another phenomenal cadre of panelists that Anna will be in conversation with tomorrow.